I gave my parents $3,000 every month for 3 years, but when I came for Thanksgiving, they kicked me out. I always thought I was doing enough for my family. Being the eldest son comes with expectations, but I'd always figured I was meeting them. At 34, I've carved out a decent life for myself. I'm an engineer at a big tech company, pulling in a salary most people would envy. I own my home, and though it's nothing extravagant, it's mine. But what weighs on me more than the mortgage or the long hours at work is the $3,000 check I send to my parents every month. It's been that way since the pandemic hit and wiped out their furniture business. For decades, my parents ran a small shop that sold handcrafted wooden furniture. People loved their work, but when everything shut down, the orders dried up and they couldn't recover. They were left with debts and no income. At the time, I didn't think twice about stepping in. Family helps family, right? Now, nearly 3 years later, the $3,000 has become less a gesture of love and more a stone tied around my ankle. It's not just the money, though it's hard to ignore how much it eats into my budget. I've put off saving for a bigger house or even taking a proper vacation. The part that stings is a growing sense that it's never enough. Every month, I hear the same phrases. "You're so successful, Alex. We're proud of you, but don't forget, family always comes first." They don't say it outright, but the subtext is clear. I could do more. And maybe they're right. I'm single, no kids, no major expenses beyond my own. My coworkers talk about their kids' private school tuition or their spouses' spending habits. Compared to them, I have it easy. But that doesn't stop the resentment from creeping in when I hear the guilt-laden comments during our weekly calls. It's as if being successful means my life should revolve around their needs, not mine. Last week, my mom called with a friendly reminder about Thanksgiving dinner. It's not like I was going to skip it. I haven't missed a family gathering in years. Still, her tone was unmistakable. "Don't forget how important this is for us, Alex. We've been through a lot, and we all need to be together." She didn't need to add, "It's your duty to be there." That part was implied. I told myself it wouldn't be so bad. Thanksgiving had always been a little tense. Discussions about money, life choices, the occasional jab about when I'd finally settled down. But this year I decided to go the extra mile. I'd picked out a new 55-inch smart TV for them, something I knew they couldn't afford and wouldn't splurge on themselves. It's not just a gift, it's a peace offering. Maybe, I thought, it would buy me some goodwill and remind them that I'm doing my best. But as the day crept closer, I couldn't shake the feeling that this dinner was going to be different. My dad had been more reserved lately, my mom's calm and sharper. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something was off. It wasn't just the usual family drama simmering beneath the surface. This felt like the kind of storm you don't see coming until it's too late. Despite the uneasy feeling in my gut, I told myself it was nothing. Thanksgiving is about family, and no matter how complicated ours might be, it's still worth showing up. At least, that's what I kept telling myself as I loaded the TV into my car and prepared to head over, bracing for whatever was waiting for me on the other side of the dinner table. Thanksgiving morning had a crisp chill in the air, and the drive to my parents' house was quiet except for the low hum of the radio. I rehearsed what I'd say if things turned tense. A cheerful start, a compliment about the food, and maybe a reminder of the new TV waiting in my car. It felt silly, like gearing up for a job interview, but the uneasy feeling from the past week wouldn't leave me alone. When I arrived, the house felt different. It wasn't the warm, welcoming chaos of Thanksgiving's past. My mom greeted me at the door, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She avoided my gaze, brushing past me to check on something in the kitchen. My dad barely nodded in my direction before disappearing into the living room. It was like walking into a room where an argument had just ended, and everyone was pretending nothing happened. Megan, my younger sister, was in the kitchen, juggling a tray of side dishes. She had moved back in with our parents after her divorce last year, bringing her 2 young kids with her. We hadn't been particularly close growing up, but I tried to be supportive during her rough patch. Still, as I walked in, I caught her giving me a pointed look. When she leaned over to whisper, her words hit like a slap. You know they're upset with you, right? They think you could do more. I blinked, stunned. Before I could respond, she busied herself with arranging the food, leaving me to stew in the kitchen's growing heat. The tension followed me to the dining room, where my parents were already seated. The table was set beautifully, as always, but the atmosphere felt like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Dinner started with the usual small talk, but it didn't take long for the conversation to turn. My mom brought up the rising cost of utilities and the repairs the house needed. My dad mentioned how tough it was to make ends meet these days. I nodded along, but their words grew sharper, more pointed. Finally, my dad sighed and said what they'd clearly been holding back. Alex, the $3,000 you send us each month isn't enough anymore. He listed off expenses. The mortgage, Megan's kids' needs, medical bills. The numbers blurred together, but the message was clear. They wanted me to double my contribution to $6,000. I tried to keep my tone measured as I explained that I couldn't afford that. I reminded them of the TV I just brought, the fact that I already covered their mortgage and utilities. But my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. My mom's voice shook as she accused me of putting myself above the family. My dad's eyes narrowed as he said I'd forgotten where I came from. Then Megan chimed in. She said I didn't understand what it meant to struggle, that my single life was easy compared to raising kids on her own. She mentioned the trips I'd taken for work, the upgrades I'd made to my house, painting me as selfish and indulgent. Her words stung because they weren't just accusations. They felt like betrayals. The room felt smaller with every word they threw at me. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. Their voices blurred together, an overwhelming chorus of disappointment and frustration. I looked at the faces around the table, my parents, my sister, and realized how much had shifted between us. This wasn't the family I thought I knew. The weight of their expectations pressed down on me, and as much as I wanted to defend myself, I knew there was no point. They didn't want an explanation. They wanted more from me, regardless of the cost. I sat in silence, the tension so thick it was hard to breathe. As the accusations hung in the air, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had irreversibly broken. The words hit like a slap. My father's declaration. If I wasn't willing to give more, I was no longer welcome in their home. Hung in the air, silencing the chaos that had erupted just moments before. My first instinct was disbelief, followed closely by anger. It wasn't just a demand for more money. It was the way it was framed, as though my value to them was measured in dollar signs. I stood there, stunned, before something inside me snapped. I turned and left the table, leaving the TV by the door as a reminder of what they clearly didn't appreciate. The drive home was a blur. My mind raced with everything that had been said, each accusation, an insult replaying like a broken record. By the time I reached my house, the anger had subsided, replaced by a hollow ache in my chest. I'd always believed that family was about love and support, but tonight had ripped that illusion apart. In the days that followed, the fallout was impossible to ignore. My mom's text started rolling, and almost immediately, each one was a mix of guilt-tripping and subtle accusations, painting me as the villain who had torn the family apart. She framed my refusal to give more money as selfishness, ignoring everything I had already sacrificed. The words hurt, but what stung more was the realization that she wasn't trying to mend things. She just wanted me to cave. Then there was Megan. She didn't bother with texts or calls. Instead, she took her grievances to social media, posting vague but pointed comments about people who abandoned family for their own comfort. The likes and supportive comments from her friends felt like salt in the wound, each one reinforcing her narrative while painting me as the bad guy. For a while, I tried to brush it off. I buried myself in work, avoided social media, and ignored my phone as much as possible. But the nagging feeling that something wasn't adding up wouldn't leave me alone. My parents had painted a picture of financial desperation, but parts of it didn't quite fit. They'd talked about rising costs and unexpected expenses, but their demands for more money seemed excessive, even accounting for Megan's situation. The truth started to unravel when I bumped into an old family friend at the grocery store. He mentioned, almost in passing, how nice it was that my parents had been able to help Megan settle her divorce debts. The comment stopped me in my tracks. Divorce debts? That was the first I'd heard of it. My parents had always framed my contributions as going toward household expenses and bills, not Megan's personal finances. The pieces started falling into place when he added that my dad's new car was quite a step up from their old one. I knew my parents had struggled after the pandemic, and buying a new car seemed like an odd priority if things were as dire as they claimed. The more I thought about it, the more suspicious I became. If my money wasn't just going to keep the lights on and food on the table, then where exactly had it been going? The idea that my parents might have been less than honest about their financial situation gnawed at me. I'd trusted them implicitly, never questioning where the money went. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been taken advantage of. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to dig deeper, even if it meant confronting the people I'd once thought I could always rely on. Returning to my parents' house felt different this time. There was no anticipation of a warm family dinner or shared laughter, just a cold resolve to get answers. Armed with printed bank statements and a determination to understand where my money had been going, I parked in the driveway, steeling myself for whatever confrontation awaited inside. The door creaked open, and my mom's surprised expression quickly morphed into guarded politeness. My dad was in the living room, pretending to focus on a news channel, but the tension in his jaw gave him away. I wasted no time. Sitting down across from them, I laid the papers on the table and calmly said we needed to talk. At first, they tried to deflect. My mom mentioned Megan's kids needing new clothes for school, and my dad brought up a plumbing issue that had supposedly drained their savings. But when I pressed for specifics, they faltered. I pointed out the inconsistencies, how the amounts they requested didn't align with the supposed expenses. It was like peeling back layers of an onion, each excuse unraveling until the truth lay bare. The first blow came when I confronted them about Megan's debts. My mom hesitated before admitting that a significant chunk of my money had gone toward paying off Megan's credit cards and legal fees from her divorce. They'd framed it as a family necessity, saying she needed help to get back on her feet. The anger bubbled up, but I pushed it down, focusing instead on the next question. What about the new car? My dad's face turned red as he mumbled something about the old one being unreliable. When I asked if the repairs they'd mentioned had been a cover for the car purchase, he didn't deny it. Instead, he justified it by saying they deserved some comfort after everything they'd been through. The betrayal hit hard. This wasn't just about mismanaging money. It was about a complete lack of respect for my trust and sacrifices. As the conversation wore on, their defenses grew weaker, and the reality of their actions became painfully clear. They'd used my support as a safety net to indulge in things they wanted, not just what they needed. And all the while, they made me feel guilty for not doing enough. The weight of their choices crushed any lingering illusions I'd held about our family dynamic. When I told them I couldn't continue supporting them under these conditions, the response was immediate and vicious. My mom's voice cracked as she accused me of abandoning them, of caring more about money than family. My dad's words cut even deeper, saying I'd forgotten where I came from and that I was no longer welcome in their home if I wouldn't pull my weight. Megan wasn't there, but her voice echoed through their accusations. Her needs held up as justification for every decision they'd made. I felt like I was drowning in their anger, but beneath it all was a sense of clarity. This wasn't about me failing them. It was about them taking advantage of me. Their refusal to acknowledge their own mistakes or even consider an apology spoke volumes. I realized that no amount of money or effort on my part could fix what was broken. As I stood to leave, the finality of my decision settled over me. I told them I wouldn't be sending another check unless they proved they could use it responsibly. The silence that followed was deafening. My mom turned away, tears streaming down her face, while my dad muttered under his breath, refusing to meet my eyes. Walking out of that house, I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. I'd drawn a line, but it came at the cost of my relationship with the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The betrayal was deeper than I'd ever imagined, and as I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was no coming back from this. My refusal to support their lies had shattered our bond, leaving me to wonder if it had ever been real to begin with. Cutting ties with my parents wasn't easy, but it was necessary. After the confrontation, I made the decision to end all financial support. It wasn't out of spite, but self-preservation. Their calls and texts came relentlessly at first, each one dripping with guilt and manipulation. I ignored them, but the weight of their words lingered. When it became too much, I blocked their numbers. It felt cold, but I couldn't let them pull me back into the same cycle of demands and disappointments. Megan's attempts to reach out weren't any better. She called me selfish, accusing me of tearing the family apart. She painted herself as the victim, blaming me for abandoning her and her kids. Her messages were filled with the same passive-aggressive tone I'd come to expect, but I didn't engage. I'd spent enough time trying to please people who only saw me as a resource to be exploited. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Without the financial burden, I was able to focus on myself. I took a much-needed vacation, something I hadn't allowed myself in years. I started setting money aside for my future, a future that finally felt like it could be mine. I even splurged on a few things I'd always wanted but never justified buying, like a new bike and upgraded furniture for my home. Each purchase felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. The guilt was harder to shake. There were nights when I questioned my choices, wondering if I'd done the right thing. But every time I thought about the years of sacrifice and the way they'd used me, the doubt faded. I realized that the guilt wasn't mine to carry. Their expectations had been unfair, and meeting them had only enabled their behavior. A year later, my mom reached out again. Her message was softer this time, filled with apologies and a request to rebuild our relationship. But even then, there was a hint of expectation, a subtle reminder of how things had always been. I thought about responding, about giving them one more chance, but I knew better. Nothing would change. Their love had always come with conditions, and I wasn't willing to pay the price anymore.
Bye-bye.